Good morning. How's everybody doing? Great. All right. Well, I don't know if you saw the title of our message today. It's called Building the Next Generation. As Pastor Mark promised last week, we're going to talk about parenting, but I decided to title it Building the Next Generation because this really talks to every adult that has any influence over a kid. Let's see how is the room divided. How many of you are in here and you don't have any kids, but hopefully one day you'll have kids? Let's see. All right. Well, there's like 3 of you. Well, this generation is going to die very soon. How many of you have kids under 2 years of age? All right. They're still, that little girl raised her hands like, no, you don't. How many of you have kids between 3 and 7, 8? Okay, yeah, you're in the middle of it, yeah. Preteens, teenagers, a mix of all of the above, yeah. Okay, how many of you have adult kids that are still living at home? Keep your hand up if you want them to leave as soon as possible. How many of you are boomerang parents? You send your kids to the world and they came right back. Okay, so we have all kinds of people here with and without kids. And the truth is, look, we know that raising kids, it's really hard. Okay, we had 4, and one of the things that we learned in a hurry is that they are very different. And what works with one doesn't necessarily work with the other one, and that makes it harder, because after the first one you think you got it, and it took us 3 to get the 4th one right. So, it takes a while, But on top of it, things are really tough for us as parents, as adults trying to raise kids, because, we're in at war here for the family. Society doesn't really help us raising kids, but there is hope because, family was designed by God. It was His design, and when we follow His instructions, then things work, okay? Now, I know that there is absolutely no way that I can teach you in one sermon, how to do parenting correctly in every possible area of parenting. So what I'm gonna try and do today is I'm gonna try and begin with the end in mind. I'm gonna try and paint an image, a picture in your head of the things that you should be trying to accomplish in your kids, okay? So let me pray for us real fast, and we're going to analyze these things. Father, I just thank you for your love. We know, Lord, that raising kids, it's a real big responsibility. They are your inheritance to us, and we're responsible for as long as they are under our roof, we're responsible for them. So will you please just give us grace, give us wisdom, give us guidance, because we want to do the best that we can with what we have. We put ourselves in your hands in the beautiful name of your Son, Jesus Christ. Amen. All right, so what we want to achieve in our children, I'm going to talk about 4 things. There's a lot more, but these 4 are basic. First of all, we want confident children. And I'm talking about kids that have a healthy self-image. I'm not talking about arrogance or insolence, which is what usually happens with some parents that are trying to build the image of their kids and they become very arrogant. That's not what we're trying to accomplish. We just want them to have a healthy self-image. So let's talk about what do they need from us in order to accomplish these things. See, for our children to become confident, we need, first of all, they need affection. See, every healthy child, has this in common. They have received affection consistently from the adults around them. When children don't feel emotionally supported by their parents or the caregivers around them, they will struggle to feel secure of themselves. When parents are distant, distracted, or inconsistent in their attention, they're going to feel unloved and unimportant. And look, I know that there are some people that have effective obstacles. I hear especially men saying things like, well, I'm not the affectionate type. That's why I don't give them affection. See, if that is your case, chances are that you did not receive the affection that you needed when you were a child. But if I might talk to you directly, you're no longer a child, and you need to break that cycle. Because if you continue with that, then you're going to raise another generation of kids that don't know how to express affection. And these are basic key points that will help them in their relationships, in all of their relationships. So how do we give affection to the kids? Because see, some parents are like, oh, they know I love them. I don't have to tell them. They just know. It's like, no, they don't. So there's two things that you need to do. The first one is you have to give them words of encouragement. Words of encouragement. We all need motivation. But see, the problem for many of us is we tend to focus more on the negative things that they do than in the positives. When a baby turns into a toddler, the word that they hear more often than not is no. 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 Right? Instead of telling them what they can do, we tell them what they cannot do. And see, on top of it, to make things more complicated, I have this once said to me by a teacher, actually. He said, imagine your life as if it was a very long hallway. And on one side, you would have the images of all the people that were a positive influence in your life. And on the other side, you would have all the images of the people that were hurtful, that they did or said things that were hurtful to you. If you're like most people, you tend to remember more the negative stuff than the positive stuff. Because negative words, they leave scars in your heart. And the Bible actually tells us this. In Proverbs 12, verse 18, it says, the words of the reckless pierce like swords, but the tongue of the wise brings healing. See, so the words of a wise parent, a wise adult, will heal the heart of a kid. And we know this intuitively, but we keep doing it. See, we use words that, without us noticing, modify their behavior. I hear parents say these things in front of their kids all the time that I'm like, do they realize what they're doing? It's like, oh yeah, this is the shy one. Like you're telling them, or this is Charlie, he's a menace to society. And it's funny and stuff, but the kid's listening to this, you're molding his heart. Words are powerful, and they either build or destroy their character and their security. So 2 pieces of advice when it comes to words of encouragement: highlight their qualities. Try to express always about your son or daughter in a positive way. Focus on the things that are positive. What do they do well? And talk about that. See, a lot of people don't realize the power of focusing on the positive things. They don't understand what they are doing to their kids when they are all the time focusing on the negative. There was an experiment that they performed in Harvard many years ago. This was like 30 years ago. And up until today, the scientists that performed this experiment cannot explain exactly how this happened. They got 3 groups of students, and they gave each group a group of rats, of lab rats. And the first one got a group of rats that were genius rats, that they had been trained. They told them, we have been training these rats, so they're going to have to solve a maze and try to find the cheese in the middle. Buy a lot of cheese, because these rats are very smart, and they're going to all consistently find the cheese. And then the second group got a group of rats that were just average rats, normal rats. They said, some of them are going to find the cheese, some are not, so of course they were scientifically observed. And the last group, they said, we have been inbreeding these rats for many generations, so these are dumb rats. You don't have to buy much cheese. Actually, just write cheese on a piece of paper, because they might never, get to the end of the maze, And they went, and for a month, they were timing and testing these rats under supervision. And at the end of the experiment, exactly what they thought was going to happen happened. The genius rats, all of them got to the cheese. The average rats, some of them did, some didn't. And the dumb rats, a couple of rats got lost and found the cheese by accident, But the surprising thing is, at the end, what they shared with them is that all the rats were the same. The only difference is what they told the students about the rats. And scientists don't understand how on earth did they convey to the rats how they felt about the rats. So if that is true for a rat, How about your kids? So think about it. What type of kids do you have? Do you have genius kids? Do you have average kids? Are they dumb? Because whatever you think of them, you're passing it on to them. That's the power of how you focus things when you're parenting. The type of person that they will become, in many ways, it's up to you. So highlight the good things, the qualities. The second advice I would give you is try to catch them doing something right. Because most parents use the parent style of gotcha. You know, they're just like, ha. You know, they just see when they do something wrong. Actually, that's one of the most typical complaints that we get from teenagers at church. They say, yeah, my parents are experts at identifying when I do something wrong. You have to catch them doing something right. You know why? The behavior that you recognize is the behavior that they will repeat. So you want to catch them doing these things. And just a word of caution, notice that I said highlight their qualities. I didn't say their success. Because if all you do is praise them when they win, when they succeed at something, instead of when they put all their effort, when they put their heart into things and stuff, then they're going to think that your love is dependent on them succeeding. And that should not be the case. It's when they truly put their heart into things, okay? All right, so they need words of encouragement, but there's also a different way in which you need to show affection. And I put in your notes hugs and kisses. What I mean is physical affection. You know, from the moment that we are born, we are hungry for contact. There have been a lot of studies done of how babies do not develop the same way if they don't have physical contact. You know, I'm sure you have read babies that are in incubators and they're like starting to die until they start touching. Someone puts their hand in and it's touching them all the time, or they put a sibling in there, and just the physical contact makes them thrive. See, this is very easy when our kids are little. They're huggable and kissable and stuff, but they start growing, and you know, kids start like the side hug and they start acting like they don't really want it. Trust me, they need it. Even if they tell you that they don't want it, it's not true. We need this all of our lives, boys and girls. So usually boys are discouraged to show affection and emotions because it's considered a sign of weakness. Weakness? To show your emotions? Jesus wept more than once. How is that a sign of weakness? It's a sign of strength. God gave you emotions to experience life. And with girls, I think that, you know, with all the things that are going on in our society and the fear of being inappropriate, you know, sometimes the fathers don't want to show much affection. Listen, if boys are not shown affection, they are not going to learn how to express their emotions. And if girls are not shown affection by their father, they're going to look for love somewhere else. And this is one of the main reasons why girls start having sexual relationships early in life. Because they need to feel loved, they need to feel cared for. And if you as a father don't have that relationship with your daughter, she is going to look for it somewhere else. So we need to hug them and kiss them, not to embarrass them. You know, it doesn't have to be in front of their friends if they don't like that. But if you make it a consistent habit, it's going to become natural. You know, maybe you've never got it in your childhood, so you feel weird about it. You know, an interesting thing, my father was a hugger and a kisser. So all of us in our family hug and kiss our kids. My kids are adults and they'll come and hug me and kiss me all the time. When I met my wife, Karina, her family wasn't like that at all. She was not told that she was loved or hugged consistently when she was a kid, but she married into our family. And she had no choice because we all hugged her and kissed her. And so she started hugging and kissing and telling how much she loves her mom. And now her mom's like that. So this is something that it can become natural to you if you start practicing, okay? So we have to show it. 1 John 3:18 says, "Dear children, let us not love with words or speech, but with actions and in truth." So they need affection. Second thing that we're trying to accomplish in our kids is we want children with character and convictions. Character and convictions. We need kids that know that they have the capacity to decide for themselves what they're gonna do. They don't have to follow the crowd. That's character. They have a spine. They can stand up for themselves and say no. But what we also want them to have convictions. Convictions is knowing the difference between what's right and what's wrong. Otherwise they just do what they feel is right. Now there's people that think that having character and convictions is the same thing, but it's not. See, if you have character with no convictions, you're gonna do what you want, but not necessarily the right thing. And if you have convictions, but you don't have character, then you're going to be afraid to do the right things if the crowd is against it. You're going to cave into peer pressure if you don't have those convictions and character. So they need both. And for them to be able to do that, they need things from us. What do they need? Well, first of all, they need good examples. They need to see it. See, that is the natural way in which we learn. Human beings, by watching, when we're little and we're growing, we're seeing what's happening and we're learning as we go. So your kids are seeing you. They're watching your values, your convictions, your belief system every single day. So, how well do you fulfill your commitments? What is your work ethic? How responsible are you? How much do you align your behavior with the values and principles that we teach at church? Because we're teaching you and we're teaching them. And if they come here and hear one thing, they go home, see something else, they think this is all a lie. It is amazing to me when I see parents lie in front of their kids. Sometimes for things that are not even needed. Not long ago, we're gonna have a project at church. We're gonna paint some rooms. And a man said to me, I'll volunteer to come the afternoon before, set up all the stuff, and I'll be there on Saturday at 8 a.m. and I'll direct all the volunteers that come. And usually when it's missions on Saturday, my wife Karina's there. She's always involved in the missions. And usually on Saturday I'm working on my sermon, so I rarely go to these things, but she's there all the time. But that Saturday, she felt sick. So she told me, it's like, hey, can you go at 8, just greet the volunteers and make sure that everything is fine? And I said, sure. So I got there like at 15 to 8, and I'm in the parking lot, and there's a bunch of volunteers, and the man in charge is not there. So I called him on the phone, and I was like, hey, how you doing? Good. I said, hey, are you gonna be at church? He was like, I'm already there. And I said, you're already there? Where are you? In the parking lot. And I'm standing in the parking lot, looking at the gate, And I said, okay, because I'm here. No, I'm almost there. And like 2 minutes later, he drove in, and I'm standing there with the phone watching him with his kids in the car. In front of his kids, lying to the pastor of the church. I was like, man, this is why being a good parent, it's really, really hard. Because the things that you want in your kids for God to do, you have to allow Him to do them in you first. You have to be transformed first, because you're going to shape them, with the way that you behave. Tell them I'm not here. We're not gonna say this to your father. Okay, don't let your mom know that we did this. What are you doing? How are you training them? You have to dig deep in your faith and allow God to work in you. You have to let them see your faith in action. You know why a lot of young people think that the Bible is obsolete? Because they don't see anyone using it at home. So why are they going to use it? We need to be a good example. And listen, I know that one of the most common things we have in our society today are mixed families. Divorce and remarriage, it's very common. So there's families with kids that are not theirs. And you have to understand, you're marrying everyone. You are responsible for the example that you set there too. And you have to be the adult in that relationship. You know, a lot of adults complain that it's just that they treat me bad, and so I treat them bad back. It's like they're the victim here. They didn't ask for this. You're the adult. You have the job of earning their trust and give them a good example at showing them how an adult behaves. You know, and with your kids, if your kids spend time with your ex, there's people that get divorced and behave like teenagers, and they try to attack the ex through the kids. You realize the one that you're hurting the most is the kid, right? It's like somebody has to be the responsible adult and love them and show them how an adult, a godly adult, behaves, and that's you. Okay? So, also, for them to have character and conviction, besides good examples, they need discipline. And I know this is not fun, in parenting. The parenting part of discipline is not something that we enjoy, but it's something that they desperately need. Kids need boundaries. And according to their age, the boundaries go changing, and the discipline that they receive goes changing as well. But see, what I have learned from the Bible is that godly discipline is more a guidance than a punishment. You know what I'm saying? It looks more to the future than to the past. Or said in a different way, discipline should come out of love, not anger. It is because you love them and you want them, you want the best for them in the future, that you're going to give them discipline. See, the Bible says that there is no love without discipline. You can't separate them. Okay? In Proverbs chapter 3, verses 11 and 12, it says, "My child, don't reject the Lord's discipline, and don't be upset when he corrects you. For the Lord corrects those he loves, just as a father corrects a child in whom he delights." Love and disciplines go hand in hand, and you're going to save yourself a lot of headaches if you start disciplining your kids from the time that they're very, very young. Practical advice about discipline. Number one, don't go to the extremes. See, some parents are too intense in their disciplines. Actually, there's just discipline. It's like a book full of rules and barely a relationship. And then we have the other extreme, parents that love their kids so much that they can't possibly discipline them. You're hurting them. And then you have a third group that keeps swinging between one extreme and the other. They discipline and discipline and discipline, and then they see the pain they're causing and they feel guilt, so they don't discipline at all until the kid rebels, and then they go back to. It's like you're confusing your kids horribly. There has to be a balance between love, relationship, and discipline. How do we find this balance? Well, plan ahead before disciplining. It's a very good advice. When we first become parents, these things catch us by surprise if we were not trained by another person that knew what he was doing or she was doing. Because you have a kid and you're very happy, and all of a sudden they start disobeying and you start disciplining. But if you don't put a little bit of head into this matter, you're going to make mistakes. You're going to start dishing out consequences that are useless or inapplicable out of anger. You can watch TV for 5 years. You're going to say some stupid things that then you won't be able to apply, and then they'll know that it's not even true. So what you have to do is come up with a system of actions and consequences according to their age as a team. If you are the two of you there, you have to agree on these things. If you are raising your kids on your own, let me tell you, you're my hero. Because that's very challenging. But you also have to do this. You have to create a system of behavior and consequences based on that behavior, and you have to have them before they need it. You have to explain it to them very clearly before you're going to apply it. Because if you don't tell them ahead of time what the consequences are to their behavior, this is why kids say, "But that's not fair." Even if they did something that grants some consequence, if you didn't tell them what the consequence was going to be, they think it's unfair. But if you tell them ahead of time, what you're telling them is who is responsible for the consequence. It's not you. If you do this, this is what's going to happen. So now they know that the responsible for the consequence, it's them. From the time they're very young, we're going to go to the store, and I'm not going to buy you a candy, and if you start throwing a fit, this is what's going to happen. From very early, if you don't do your homework, if you do your homework, if you don't get good grades, if you get grades, what's going to happen? See, if you do these things, you can apply consequences without even raising your voice. I remember my son Marco, when he was about 15 years old, they invited him to a 15th birthday party, and he told me, can I come to the party? And I was like, where is this? And it was going to be at a hotel there in Cancun. And I said, okay, I'm going to take you, and I'm going to pick you. Okay, I'm going to pick you up at 12. And he said, can it be 1? And I said, no. You're 15. I'm going to pick you at 12. If you are responsible, we'll consider later time. But I'm going to pick you at 12. I'm going to be outside at 12, and you're going to be outside at 12. And if you're not there, next time it's going to be 11:30. Is it clear? Yes. Okay. So I came to pick him, and he wasn't there. So I walked into the hotel. I had to go looking for the room. I found him. He goes, I'm so sorry, just that they distracted. I was on my way out. Like, I'm so sorry, Marquito, it's fine. But next time it's 11:30. But Dad is like, sorry, it's 11:30. If next time I pick you at 11:30, then we can go back to 12. So guess what happened next time? 11:30, he was standing outside, because he wanted to be allowed to come at 12. And I told him, if you were here at 12, next time it might be 12:30, but I want to see it first. So he knows who's responsible for these consequences. Okay? So plan ahead. Also, never discipline out of anger. Never. The worst abuses that children have ever suffered from adults is when they give discipline out of anger. And as I said, there is no need. When these things are planned, I have cried with my daughters, like, you can go to the party. But I was looking for, and I would hug and cry, no, I'm sorry. No, you can't go, But I don't even have to be angry. I'm sad with you. But when you do it in anger, you're going to hurt them somehow. See, bodies are fragile, but spirits, the heart of your kid is even more fragile. See, I know there are controversies nowadays, between spanking a kid and not ever laying a hand on them. I'm not going to tell you what to do. Personally, I experienced with our kids that a couple of spankings when they were very little caused that they never had to be spanked again. But because of all the abuses that have been committed physically against kids, I understand why that feeling of don't even touch them, okay? But here's the important things when it comes to discipline. You need to know they need discipline, and the key for discipline to succeed is consistency, inflexibility. Once you set a boundary, if they break the boundary, they have to get the consequence. Otherwise, they're always testing. Always. If you once say, well, fine, this one time, they're always going to think, maybe this is the time again. And they're going to keep trying and trying and trying. And the younger you start, the better. Okay? Third goal of what we want from our kids, we want responsible and competent children. It is important that they are strong in their faith, but that doesn't mean we don't prepare them for life. They need to learn to use their gifts, their skills, that there are people that makes a difference, and they're not waiting for somebody else to carry their load. See, if they don't learn responsibility, they will hardly be able to succeed in relationships, in school, and then at work. Okay, so they need to learn responsibility and to become competent. What do they need from you? What do they need from me? First of all, letter A, you have to help them mature. See, the job of a parent is to help the kids to go through what Stephen Covey called the maturity continuum. See, there are 3 stages in life when it comes to maturity, and we're all born in the first one, and our job as parents is to help them go to the other two. There is dependence, independence, and interdependence. We are all born dependent in 4 areas of this world. Physically, we're dependent. You know, when a baby is born, you need to dress it, you need to feed it, you know, you put on their shoes, you do their hair, you know, they keep growing and you're still doing physically everything for them. That's physical dependence. There's mental dependence. You need to think for them. They can't think for themselves yet. They don't know the world, so you have to guide them. That's why you help them and teach them how to cross the street holding their hands. You know, you help them understand situations, how the world works. That's mentally dependent. Financially, we're all born broke. We don't have a cent to our name, so somebody has to support us. That's normal. And emotionally, when you're little, you know, your well-being emotionally depends on how the others make you feel. If you feel that your parents love you, now, oh, what a good boy, then you feel good about yourself. But they say, bad boy, then you feel bad about yourself. That's emotional dependence. That's fine. You know, as a starting point, that's where we all start. But your job is to move them from dependence to independence in all of them. Because many people, you know, mature in one area but not in another. So, like physically, you have to start letting them do things. Okay, now you do it. You have to learn to tie your own shoes. You're already 17. You know, it's time. You know, it's like, come on, you try at least. You know, it's like you have to let them give it a try. Mentally, when they come and face a problem, they don't know how to solve it. Instead of just solving it for them as they're growing, you throw it back at them. What would you do? What do you think you can do? What do you think would happen if you do it that way? And let them make mistakes. This is the natural way of learning. So you let them think for themselves. Financially, you know, our responsibility is to cover their needs. When they start having wants, it's like, okay, let's think of ways where you can make a little bit of money. You know, how about you wash the car? You know, how about you start saving from the allowance that I give you? How about you start making them be mature about money? And emotionally, you have to start showing them about how God loves them for themselves. It's not a popularity contest. You don't need for everyone to accept you and love you to feel good emotional about yourself. And this is why it's so important that you teach them character and convictions, because they have to feel secure in the love of God, living a life for God. But that's what the goal is, for them to be healthy emotionally. And I'm not going to get deep into this, but the goal is not independence. The goal is interdependence. To teach them that physically, you know, they can do things, but of course, as a team, together we can do more. We can have brainstorm sessions mentally. You know, when we put capitals together, you know, that we can produce more things. And emotionally, I can be perfectly fine, you know, with the love of God, but I operate a lot better in life when I have a group of people that truly love me and I love them back. So interdependence is the goal, okay? Second thing you have to do is allow them to experience consequences. If you want kids with character and convictions, they need to experience consequences. See, our natural instinct as parents is to protect them. One thing is to protect them, but a very different one is to overprotect them. See, the problem is when you overprotect them, you cause them more harm than if you just let them suffer them. There is certain amount of pain and suffering that they have to experience from their actions if they're going to grow up. And I'll give you a physical example that will hopefully explain it in the emotional way. See, my wife Karina, when they took her wisdom tooth, the doctor, you know, did something wrong, and part of her mouth has absolutely no feeling. They killed all her feeling on this side. And because she doesn't experience pain on this side, one of her molars got completely rotten and had to be extracted because she never felt the pain that she should have felt the moment it started getting bad. And the same thing happens with your kids. If they don't experience when they're young things that should hurt, because you're covering everything, then they don't grow up, they don't learn. A little bit of pain when they're little, it's going to save them a lot of big pain when they're older, because once they go out into the world, you're not going to be able to catch all the pain. You're not going to be able to protect them forever. See, Proverbs 27 verse 12 says, the prudent see danger and take refuge. See, a prudent person sees it coming, but the simple keep going and pay the penalty. If you do not allow them to face consequences today, they will always be imprudent. And when they go out into the world, they're going to pay very expensive, high consequences. Okay, so that is how we help them to become responsible and competent adults. And the last thing that I'm going to talk about today, we want happy children. Now, childhood, your preteen, teenage years should be a happy time, should be an enjoyable time. They should have fun memories from that time. And I know that, that is not always possible. I know that oftentimes, and nowadays we're seeing it more and more, we're facing really, really hard circumstances. But as much as you can, as much as is in your control, you have to make the best of what you have, the best of the circumstances that you're facing. See, as adults, we constantly forget that we are supposed to enjoy life. When kids are kids, they enjoy life. But we usually start stressing them when we start passing them our stress, when we start venting our stress in front of them. See, Proverbs 17, verse 22 says, a cheerful heart is good medicine, but a broken spirit saps a person's strength. See, I remember a time on our life, we had only 3 of our 4 kids at that time, and they were little, and I had quit my job to start, a little company that we started at that time, and it didn't succeed. So, when we shut it down, I found myself without a job, without prospects for work, and we went through like 3 or 4 months of me trying to find jobs, trying to find projects, and nothing working. And I was not realizing this, but I was overstressed and stressing everyone around me. And I remember one day I was sitting on our bed and I was just with my head, pulling my hair, trying to think what to do. And Karina came and sat right next to me and said, I realize that you're kind of waiting for things to go well so that you can start enjoying life, but you're not realizing this is life. You're missing it. And you're stressing every one of us around you. It was like a bucket of cold water in my face. See, Ecclesiastes 11:8 says, when people live to be very old, let them rejoice in every day of life, but let them also remember there will be many dark days. See, that verse is talking about the fact that there are going to be days in our lives which are going to be very dark and very hard to enjoy. But why would you make dark all the other days for silly things that you shouldn't let get to you that bad? You know what was the funny thing, ironic thing of that stage of our lives? Like, I went through 3 months without work, and then by the end of the 3rd month, I got offered the best job that I had ever had in my life, and we started doing great. And what I thought is, God gave me 3 months off and I didn't enjoy a single day. I was stressed the whole 3 months. It's like, why do that? So here are 3 pieces of advice. Help your kids find joy in their daily lives. You have to try and help them find what's enjoyable of every day. And in order for you to do that with them, you have to learn to do it yourself, as I said before. See, Psalm 118:24, this is a verse that you have heard many times. This is the day the Lord has made. We will rejoice. We will rejoice and be glad in it. See, you have to learn to laugh more often, to find what's enjoyable. One of the things that I loved, Karina and I used to talk to our granddaughter video conferencing, all the time, because she lives in California, so we don't see her that often. And one of the things that Karina does every time she talks to her is ask her this question: what was the most enjoyable thing today? What did you like the most about it? Like, we went to the museum, what was your favorite part? What is it that you enjoy the most? She tries to focus her mind into, they have tough situations, but she tries to help her see that even in the middle of those situations, there are things that are enjoyable. See, another thing that we need to do is we have to keep things in their proper perspective. See, sometimes we as adults are so stressed with other things that little things come our way and we take them out of proportion. We take them out of perspective and we make them a drama and suffer for it when we don't need to. See, I read this that a woman did many years ago. This is last century when internet didn't exist, cell phones didn't exist, where everybody long distance communicated by writing letters. This is a girl that went to college. And during the first semester, she wrote every month to her parents. But then she came for the break and went back for the second semester, and she wrote after the first month, and then she stopped writing. And 2 months passed and she didn't write. And on the third month, this letter arrived. And this is what it said: "Dear Mom and Dad, please don't worry. The fire in the dorm wasn't as bad as we thought. But I did have to jump from the window of the second floor, but I only broke my ankle. But don't worry, luckily, a very wonderful young man was passing by and he took me to the emergency room. They took care of me there, and since then he has been taking care of me in his apartment. We're so in love, and I have wonderful news. We're going to get married soon, and you have always said you wanted grandkids, so I have more good news." And the parents are like, "What?" And they turned the page, and the second page said, "These are the good news. There was no fire. I didn't have to jump from a window. I didn't break any bones. I haven't met any young, I don't even have a boyfriend, but I did flunk history and I wanted you to see it in perspective." Like, who cares about history anyway, right? We need to learn to put things in their proper perspective, because oftentimes we make things into a tragedy when they're really irrelevant. And even when things are hard, there is always a way to lighten the day. See, today is October 6th. 7 years ago today, my father passed away. Exactly 7 years ago. And I remember that day as if it was yesterday. We got around my mom, my 2 brothers, my 3 sisters, all her grandkids. We were all there. And we were crying with her and hugging her. And then, I don't even remember who started remembering the silliness of my father. My father was a very funny man, and he always told us he didn't want us to cry when he died. So we started remembering anecdotes of my father, and at the end we were crying, laughing. I mean, to the point where we were crying of so much laughter. And after so much laughter, we all kind of breathed for a second, and my mom said, "We're gonna be okay. He trained us real well." And we kept laughing, just remembering how much he enjoyed life. See, he had a lot of 3x5 cards in his mirror. I took pictures of all of them. This is my favorite one. It says, "I am in charge of how I feel, and today I choose happiness." That's the way he lived. He used to say, if every problem you have becomes a tragedy, you're going to spend your life crying. So don't make it a tragedy. Find the enjoyable things. And the last thing I will say to you that you need to give your kids is, give them a house full of peace. Not a perfect house, not a quiet house, a peaceful house. Our house, when I was growing up, sometimes it was chaotic, but what I'm talking about here is this. See, your kids need a refuge from the world in their home. They're at war out there. They're warring against the X-rated culture that we live in, against abusive people, against temptations, against pressure. So they need to come to a place where they can rest, where they don't need to bring the same armor that they bring to school or to other places, where they can be themselves, when they don't have to be defensive. They feel loved, understood, appreciated. See, if a kid knows that the house is like that, feels stronger to keep worrying outside. He or she will handle better stress, pressure, because they know they can come to a place to rest. See, many parents, their main concern is to give them a house full of things, when what they need is a house full of peace. And then the parents that don't have the money to give them a lot of things, they feel guilty because they can not give them that. What they need is peace. See, Proverbs 17 verse 1 says, better a dry crust eaten in peace than a house filled with feasting and conflict. It is better to have a house that is peaceful, even if, materially speaking, there's not much. They would much love peace instead. How is a peaceful house? Well, it's a house that has discipline, but it doesn't include shouting and insults, and there are boundaries always given in love, a place where their friends are welcome, where they are free from being compared to their siblings, where they can just be themselves. And how can they get there? How can we get there? How can we create a house full of peace? Well, there's only one way, and you know that. It is by experiencing the peace of God. That's the only way. That's the only real peace. And the only reason why you can actually create a house full of peace based on the peace of God is because of what Jesus did at the cross. Because he died at the cross to reconcile us with our Father. And once we have peace with God, then we're at peace with ourselves, and we can have peace with each other. And I could explain a lot more about how to get into the peace of God, but that's what we're going to talk about in our next series, the fruit of the Spirit. So you don't miss a single message. But before I finish today, I just want to say two things. I was always an excellent parent while I was teaching this series. Always. Because teaching this series reminded me of all these things that I constantly forgot. So I was a very imperfect parent. This is not a guilt trip for you or for anyone. It's just be aware of the fact that you are in time. Even if they're adults, you can still be a good influence for your kids. So don't think of the past. You can't change the past. And if you have asked for forgiveness for whatever you did wrong, as I have many times, God has already forgiven you. You need to forgive yourself. Okay? So there are no perfect parents. But the one thing that helps us the most, but helped me to be a good husband, a good father, a good person in the world, is to daily hold God's hand, to grow and live this life holding his hand and following his guidance. And that's what we do here every week. We bring you a little bit of information to help you get closer to God so that he will transform you more and more into the person that he knows you can be. And that's how we build the next generation, by allowing him to build us. Let's pray. Father, we thank you so much for your love. We thank you, all of us that are parents, for having entrusted us with the responsibility of our kids. We know they come from you. We also thank you, Father, because we know that whether we have kids or not, we are an influence to many kids around us. And I'm just going to ask you, Lord, that you will help us, because we need your help. You know, our hearts are fallen. We are very self-centered. And in order to be good adults, good parents, we have to focus on them by focusing on you. So help us grow, Father. It's in your beautiful name that we pray. Amen.